Today I'm joined with Thomas Durr. And thanks for first of all, thanks for joining me on such late notice. The guest that I was supposed to have today, he ran into some weekend complications, so I had to scavenge and try to find someone. And luckily, Thomas was up for the challenge. And if you don't mind, could you tell us more about yourself?
Hey everybody, yeah, my name is Thomas Durr. I am a sociocultural historian. I study gender in gaming, and I'm a teacher. So I just love educating people and talking about like social issues and getting down to like the nitty gritty about things. So that's what I'm here for.
I think this is a very big topic that I'm actually curious on now. Could you tell us more about the research that you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've had the pleasure of doing research at a variety of institutions. I went to the Museum of Play in New York, and it was really cool uncovering the archives and seeing just the history of gaming. But I wanted to specifically focus on how gender was an influence in how the culture of gaming developed over time and how, male and female genders treat each other through gaming, whether it be the development end, coding, or even just the consumption. So that's pretty much what it's about, and I trace the early history of it. And it just there's a lot of interesting statistics that you will end up finding that there's always this conception that girls don't play games, but really they do. Studies show that they are about 42 to 47% of the gamer population, right? But there's always this public stigma that they don't, and that's where my research really digs in and kind of uncovers that question, like why is it that we don't think girls play games when they really do.
In that research that you've done, is there a specific genre of games that are heavily dense in female players?
Yeah, I do have one study that shows about 70% of the population of simulation games are women, and then it goes down to about 50 or 60 for related game. Actually, I can actually pull it up because I always have this statistic with me. Um,
Simulation games, do you mean those like Sims 2, Sims 3, Cookie
Yeah, even like
Mama,
the tycoon
anything?
games, stuff like that. They're about 70% in that, and also a category they call it match three, but it's supposed to be um similar to those categories. But it's a 70% population, so it's a lot, and a lot of people play those games as well.
And then when you're looking at this, because when I think of simulation games, I think of Nintendo. Is there
hmm
a specific gaming or gaming brand or console, I should say, that that females tend to stick to?
So funny enough, a big portion of my research actually looks at the marketing strategies of companies, early companies, and how their marketing strategies helped to shape how people perceive the gender and technology. And one big company, believe it or not, would be Atari. Early on in the development of video games, they are obviously like the forefront of it. They invented the first game, the first game with Pong, put it out into arcades. But the culture amongst their company was very sexist. They would have
Really?
hot tub parties, and they would be inviting the secretaries to get naked and join them.
What?
There was a bunch of drug use amongst the individuals who were putting together the machines because Atari blew up overnight and they needed there's actually a story. So Nolan Bushnell, he goes down to the unemployment office in California, and he just hired a bunch of the people that were there, and they were like all bikers and hippies, and they just came back to assemble the machines, and they were just like smoking. They were shooting up in the bathrooms, and like
What?
people, yeah, it's a really crazy environment. But he attributes it to oh, it was the summer of love, but really there was more than that. They even code named special projects after attractive secretaries in the office. He
No
actually,
way.
yeah, he actually specifically hired attractive personal secretaries for the best programmers and coders within Atari to just follow
That's
them around. And
insane.
yeah, so there's just a lot of sexualization of women that was going on at Atari. There's articles that talk to previous female employees at Atari that they'll talk about their experience there, and a lot of them, some of them don't even want to talk about it just because it was just something they want to put behind them, and that's something that we see even today, just sexualization of women in the workplace and workplace harassment. So that could be another contributing factor why women are actually not as present in the computer science field anymore, because of just the way they're treated.
And a big thing today is also the wage gap. I'm guessing too now too.
Absolutely. Like all these things are, and then we have to remember this is happening in like the late 60s and 70s. So all the issues that we have now in 2020, they've been, they were exacerbated before this. So all these issues of
Jeez.
women they weren't getting noticed for their hard work and their programming for most of the games. I think Atari, they said, only had a handful. They know for a fact there's one, and anywhere between 1 to 5 female coding employees they had,
That's
programmers,
crazy.
compared to the dozens of men that they had. And one worked on Centipede, one of the, also a very popular arcade console game. So, and they don't get any recognition, and that's one of the biggest problems going into the 80s when video games start to enter the home with Nintendo's consoles. There's just no representation within the development field. Therefore, there's no representation within the content and the narratives, other than the typical damsel in distress with like Princess Peach, um, and even Zelda. The game's named after her, but she's the one that you have to save, right? So there's a lot of ways to analyze why these things happened, and just kind of going forward, this is the precipice of like why this whole situation kind of happened.
Gotcha. And then comparing, so taking the timeline of the days of Atari to current days, has any improvements been made?
So yeah, and there is a very very extensive history, and that's where most of my research is done. Is what so what was so what was the question, right? Are women playing games? Are girls playing games? And if not, why? And there was obviously a bunch of initiatives by companies and individual programmers and developers to make a change. And one of the biggest ones was with William and Roberta. I'm sorry, Ken and Roberta Williams. They owned Sierra Online, and they're known for creating the first graphical RPG adventure, because before this, it was actually a text based adventure game. So imagine playing Skyrim, but a sentence popped up on your screen and you had to say yes or no, or pick up, or put down, or unlock. So they added graphics to that adventure game, and they pretty much started the RPG genre, which, in my personal opinion, and also just statistically, women do play a lot of RPG games, and it's also good for the LGBTQ community as well, because RPG games allowed for players to create their own identities and enter
Mm-hmm.
into universes and realities that weren't putting them down or seeing them differently or not representing them. So in this game, in RPGs, players felt represented because they were playing as themselves. Whether they
True.
wanted to be male, female, whatever it was, long hair, short, whatever you wanted to look like, you were able to explore that reality in those games. So that's one big innovation within gaming that kind of helped to represent gender, whether it was specifically or not, right? This is just one big innovation that helped change. There's actually one game called Gay Blade. I believe it came out in 1981. It was a PC joke, not a joke, but like he made it in response to the social pressures against the LGBTQ community, and I think it was actually in 1992, and it was just an RPG adventure where you would use like dildos and condoms to kill like rednecks, racist Nazis, and priests.
What?
Yeah. So
Wait.
it was pretty much just he said it was a game that he made to reflect like how he was like the people that looked down on the LGBTQ community growing up as a gay man. He oftentimes was probably disenfranchised from religious circles, right, from social circles and cultural circles, just because of his sexual identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted a game that would represent that, so that other queer individuals would feel like, this is a game for me, where I'm the main character, and this is all, this is just where this is not, I don't want to say safe space, but this is, I just feel like this game was for me finally, because up until that point there's no lead characters or character designs of gay, lesbian, or trans individuals within games. So representation is very key in promoting that audience to participate in whatever it is.
I'm just still blown away from the game Keyblade. I mean, like, I don't look why wasn't this game or isn't this game mentioned more often in any documentary, anything that like say IGN or anything posts.
Hmm.
I've never heard of this game, and I feel like this was a a big turning point in the gaming industry, which is weird that it's not being mentioned more
Oh, absolutely right.
because
You're
it
not
was
gonna
made in
hear
the
the name stuff.
1980s, but like it just doesn't make sense why it's suppressed
Yeah, I
to
mean,
me.
well, that's the thing is, right? To me, it makes sense because at the time in the 80s and 90s, women were still, fighting for women's rights, and LGBTQ members were constantly fighting against the AIDS epidemic. The AIDS epidemic was called the gay virus, like right, like these people were blamed for AIDS. AIDS was a gay virus, and that's what media was saying. Basically, like what Trump is doing with the Chinese virus, right? Like by blaming someone for an illness, right? Like this is what Americans did, conservative Republicans did in America during this time, is they just said, "Up, it's because of the gay people. People are dying. That's it. So stop being gay, and it'll go away." Like, and it hurt. That's hurtful for people to hear, and you're not being represented in society, right? There's not a lot of publicly open queer individuals, so a lot of members in the community themselves had to really always just they had to live their life in the shadow, because if they came out, then people would say, oh, gay conversion therapy, which is like one thing that Mike Pence is like a proponent of, right? Like stupid shit like that. So it makes sense, right? This is why content and video games are also used as a way to challenge social and cultural norms, which is what we see with her Interactive, Purple Moon, a couple of different companies. You're familiar with Nancy Drew, right?
I'm totally blanking on the concept of Nancy Drew, but I've definitely heard of it. It's was it a PC game? I want to say.
Yeah, so it was a PC game. If you recall from like maybe being in elementary school, do you remember the Scholastic article, the Scholastic like little shopper little magazines where you can like have a school
Yeah.
fair and buy? Yeah, they would sell them in there, and it was games for girls. And these companies started producing games that weren't just like what Mattel did, right? They just made Barbie Fashion Designer in like the 80s and just expected girls to just play fashion dress up and dating sims and romance games. What these game companies did instead is they targeted girls, but in an effort to bring them to the computer, because studies were showing that girls were just not interested in computers early on because of the way that they thought that it was dominated mostly by the boys in the classroom and men. So their goal was to just get girls onto computers to remove that fear or that anxiousness that they had, and to get them playing games. And Nancy Drew, even Carmen Sandiego by the company Broderbund, they were gender, I don't know, not necessarily gender neutral games, but they were to encourage and empower girls to get onto the computer and explore instead of just building, fashioning a doll on the screen or making a calendar. They were actually going into dangerous environments where they can die if they don't get the right information or the right evidence, and they need to solve the case of the mansion or the haunted train or whatever the one of the 30 games they made was, right? And they were
Mm.
extremely popular for this. And that's one of the good innovations that you were asking about before, is there are companies that step up and they try to either make gender neutral games that are exploratory, that push people's limits in terms of just thinking outside of the box and critical thinking skills, or just making games for girls where they actually have done market research. They bring girls in for focus groups and ask them, hey, what are you girls interested in? Like, what do you want to play? What do you see in a game that would make it entertaining for you? And that's what some of these companies ended up doing in the 90s.
Gotcha. So was Nancy Drew? Would you say is just was like a gateway into getting females into playing PC games and getting comfortable with getting in front of a computer? Maybe that would
Mhm.
encourage them to explore other PC games or just using a computer in general.
Yeah, no, 110%. That's exactly it. Based on my research, right? Like I started out like when I first started my research and my thesis, I was thinking like, oh, okay, these games like cured the problem, like right? Oh, here's games for girls. Girls can play games now. But then I really started thinking about it more, and the question of like making a game for girls, it's automatically segregating them from the community of gaming in general, right? Because if you're basically saying like, here, we're making games for girls, you girls can go play this game over here while the boys can go play Doom and Quake over here. So now you're separating the gaming community. Because what you're doing is by calling them girl games, you're defining what they are. Games for girls. And what you're doing is if it's not a girl's game, then what is it? Then it has to be a boy's game, right? And that's a
Hmm.
problem because girls were playing Doom. Like there is evidence of girls playing like Civilization Revolution, right? Like all these different all these different games at the time. Myst was one of the best sellers of all time, and it was literally like a very early version of like Rust, where it was like an exploratory um, game where you would just explore, look for evidence, solve puzzles and clues, and there was like nothing else. And these games were very impactful. It sold, I think, like 6 million copies at the time, which was like absurd. And it was only overshadowed in 2002 by Sims, the first Sims
Hmm.
release. And a lot of men and women both played that game, right? These
I
gender
enjoyed
neutral
Sims.
parties.
Like
Hmm?
for me, I enjoy Sims.
Me
Like
too.
I
I have
know,
every single one.
because like, but back in the day, I would sometimes get scrutinized for playing Sims. Like everyone would be like, "Why are you playing Sims?" And I'm like, "What's so bad about Sims? I don't understand why people were going against a guy playing Sims."
Hmm.
Do you think Sims was more like made toward females at that
No,
time, and that's what the stigmatism was around it in like the gaming community?
no, so that's the thing is, right? Like these games like Sims, like for example, Animal Crossing, when it came out, the most recent one, I bought it because I was I've never played one before, and I heard there was a lot
Hmm.
of hype behind it, and I just wanted to just try it, and it was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun to play that game. Because what like, obviously I'm a historian, so what I did is I made it my goal to like make my whole island history themed. So I was like on the hunt for like looking for historically themed villagers, and there were some like Sterling. He's a bird, he's an eagle, but he's dressed up as a knight. Like it's so badass. And I put up like pyramids and sphinxes and like spacecrafts and gods and like all this cool shit, and it was just I had fun doing that, and that's what I enjoyed out of the game, right? And there's a lot of girls that do play Animal Crossing as well, but I had an extremely great time playing that game. And same thing with Sims. I introduced gaming to all my cousins are girls, all my sisters are all younger, and they're all girls, and they experienced these games like through me because I would get them first, and then they would want to come play them, and we would play them together. And it was just a good experience to like realize like. I always experienced when I was younger, gaming wasn't gendered. I never really felt like it was because my sisters would come play with me, or they would go play their
Same.
games, or they would just come grab the second GameCube controller and just join me, and we would just
Yeah.
play. So
Yeah, I definitely feel that.
my studies really reveal that it wasn't amongst the gamers themselves where boys were like, haha, you're a girl, you can't play, you suck. It was marketing, it was society, it was like these social norms that were being pushed on people. Girls, you can't play Doom. It's violent. You're killing spawns from hell. You can't play this game. It's not for you. And they believed it. Like it's just when people are telling you no, 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 you have to go play with your Barbie, not the GI Joe figure. But really,
Uh,
if you strip away the name of what they're called, action figure or doll, they're the same fucking thing,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And it's just what you attribute to these things and how you socially construct these things that gives them meaning. And that's the problem with like the perception of gender in gaming. Ultimately, it's just perspective, and it's just a really bad perspective that we need to actually get out of, because I don't think even today in 2020 we're completely out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. There's one thing that I wanted to ask you. What if you're looking at, let's say let's talk about the three gaming console manufacturers: Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo.
Hmm.
In my eyes, I think. Do you see that Microsoft and Sony mainly market toward men? Do you think that at all?
So actually, funny enough, in 1993, I was telling you before about the congressional hearing on violence. Nintendo actually made a statement regarding so Sony. I'm not Sony. I'm sorry. Sega released a game called Night Trap, and it was basically like a surveillance game, and but it was very groundbreaking because it was full motion capture. So it basically looked like a movie because there was actually actors and actresses in in the game. And your job was to protect them from like these like really like crappy created like vampires that like hooked you with a drill gun and drilled your blood. And the women were really sexualized, and that was the problem. But Sega admitted that our audience is the average age of 22. Like, this is just what appeals to them. And Nintendo, funny enough, at the hearing said, we would never allow a game like Night Trap to ever appear on a Nintendo console. And in 2019, for the 25th year anniversary of Night Trap, they released it for $15 on the Nintendo Switch. So I find it
Oh,
very funny that they did that. They went back on their word. But it goes to show you that these companies are really ultimately trying to appeal to their audience. Nintendo claimed, like, oh yeah, the younger audience is ours. They had, I think, Sega and Nintendo owned 75% of the market share for video games at the time in the 90s, and Nintendo was known for the younger market, and Sega was for um, the older group of consumers. As
really?
for Microsoft and Sony, I do think now I think PC is pretty like Nintendo. Nintendo is still, I think, very like, there's two markets they like: children, like younger players, and
Mm-hmm.
nostalgic older players. Which is why they
Oh,
constantly re-release, like, I think they just released what, Super Mario, Sunshine, Odyssey,
yep.
and 64,
Yeah, they did.
right?
My
And
friend
like,
was
of
talking to
course
me
we're
about
gonna
that.
buy that because they're fucking great games and they're Nintendo,
Amazing,
right?
great. Yeah.
So that's the thing, right? Ultimately, it's all controlled by the market and profit. Ultimately, so I think Sony is actually pretty good at having very diverse titles. I find that a lot more women, in my personal experience, choose to play or own Sony consoles as opposed to Microsoft consoles. Because
Really?
growing up, I played on Xbox, and I can't
Same.
tell you how many lobbies you hear like little kids and just people saying the N word and other racial slurs and sexualization. Once a girl opens her mouth on like Xbox, like in a Call of Duty lobby, oh, you want to play with me? I'll carry you because you're bad. You can be my
Oh,
bitch. Blah blah
dude.
blah. Like,
It's so
it's
toxic.
toxic.
So
Yeah,
toxic.
exactly, and that's a result of like years and years, decades of marketing and gendering games, and that's the problem that I'm trying to like make people realize and like trying to just slowly pull people out of.
Do you think streaming has helped that at all?
No,
No.
I think streaming is good, right? Like, I think, for example, I actually like playing a lot of Escape from Tarkov, and I watch one streamer. His name's Clean, and he streams anywhere between like 1,000 to 3,000 viewers, like 3,000 max on a good day. And
Mm-hmm.
he's like a really good, like he's really nice. He interacts with everybody, right? He invites people to play with him. He's very engaging. I feel that there are some streamers like him that are, they're good. They're positive role models. They do a great job. And then I think there's some streamers that are just super toxic, like Tyler One in League of Legends, where he was glorified for being toxic, yet the game actually banned people for what he did, and then he got banned, and then he got unbanned by Riot. He was supposed to be permanently banned, and then he just
Really?
got unbanned because they realized he makes a shit ton of money for being dumb. And then they invite him to events now, and now he's famous and all this shit. So I think streaming has like good things and bad things about it. There's good and bad streamers, but I think streaming also is bad because what it does is, we were discussing this before, it does empower women to create an audience and create a personality for themselves. But unfortunately, I find that a lot of women do use sexuality as a basis for their platform, and I think that's bad. Just because there's a lot of just sex sells. It's just that's something we've always said in history. Just in history, like, sex always sells, and it can be a problem because you're not valuing the streamer for her content and her skill. You're valuing her because she looks great on her stream, and I think, if that's something genuinely someone really is interested in, that's fine. But overall, for gaming culture and representing women, I think it can be seen as a slightly negative thing.
Mm-hmm. How would you suggest that? Because to me, I feel like streaming is still relatively young. Maybe I'm just old, but I remember the days when Twitch, and it feels like Twitch just became like a big thing, like just like a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
And to me, I feel like streaming is still in the young stages of development. So right now, I feel like right now they're working out the kinks of streaming. How would you suggest, or how do you think things can get better from here on out?
I think so it's hard, right? Like I'm not
Hmm.
gonna not if I have nothing wrong with like sexuality, for example. So if a woman wants to express herself and her sexuality through looking nice and presenting herself, that's totally fine, right? But there, especially for example, I want to link over like to the whole OnlyFans controversy. Like now, it seems like every single girl I went to like school with is like starting an OnlyFans, and like I necessarily don't have a problem with any of that. Like that's fine. Like sex workers are normal people, right? Like I have nothing against them, right? But I think there is an extent where it invalidates the argument for like trying to represent like femininity and like womanhood. I don't know because I'm not a woman, right? I can't speak on it. Like I don't know if it like every woman having an OnlyFans is empowering or not, right? I can't make that argument. I can just only like just see what's going on like culturally, socially, and like make an assessment or try to study it the best I can. And I think that to an extent there are, for example, like there's one bad apple ruins the bunch. So there, I've seen so many like Reddit threads or just people talking about like girl streamers that like like pull up like I don't know, they just do like some really ridiculous stuff on stream like they act like they're not wearing underwear and they flash the camera by accident and it's or just like I'm just like I don't know how this is like happening and there's this actually one streamer for the life of me I can't remember her name but she's like super controversial. She used to like throw her cat all over her head. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh my god, I don't know. I was gonna
Do
say
you remember that
Pokemon.
though?
I was gonna say Pokemon, but that's like the only girl streamer
No,
that
let
I've
me
seen
actually
that
look it
has
up. Girl,
controversy.
yeah, girl streamer
Because
throwing
for me, I
cat.
don't really watch Twitch streams. Because I watch Philip DeFranco. So if anything controversial comes up with like Twitch streamers, and he's the only way that I find my news through the Twitch realm.
Yeah, and that's actually funny that you just sparked something. Actually, really quick though, for everybody listening, I did look her up. Her name is Alinity. She's a Canadian streamer, and she's a very attractive girl, and she just does a lot of very questionable things on her stream, like a lot. Like she's known for it. I think she's been banned like a couple times. But anyway, what you were saying about like Twitch and streaming is one big problem that I see is there's drama. And I don't follow it, and because my friends like they're really big into YouTubers and all that stuff, and they follow all the drama, and I'm like, I go on YouTube to like watch a specific video, and like I'm done. Like I don't like go and listen to what one YouTuber's saying about another YouTuber who did another thing to a YouTuber, and that same drama happens on Twitch with some streamers like Pokimane. I'm pretty like she's in like a gaming house with like all these other gamers, and they just always have drama amongst each other, and that's what my friends tell me at least. So that I can't really like explain in more detail, but that's just what I hear, and that's not something I'm interested in. Like I don't give a shit. Like I'd rather just go watch clean, play some Tarkov, be chill, do cool shit, and just call it quits. I don't care what they're doing like behind the scenes, right? There's supposed to be some type of professionalism as a streamer, right? You're providing an entertainment. And I feel like a lot of their personal lives get like sucked into it. And I think that's kind of like a bad thing, just in my personal opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel that. I myself, I don't keep up with the drama. Just like I said, I watch Philip DeFranco. He gives me my daily news of the world news and the YouTuber
Mm-hmm.
news. So he's like my only source of like how I know what's happening with like Jake Paul, Logan Paul, anything in the YouTuber realm.
Mm-hmm.
But interesting. And there's also one thing that kind of bugs me about video games. Specifically, some no, not all video games, but some video games. So let's take for example, Dead or Alive. It's a fighting game for those that don't know this, but in that game, the females are incredibly sexualized, and I
Mm-hmm.
never understood this concept and why it's always them in every single game. I'm pretty sure that they came under fire one year
Mm-hmm.
for being for the females being in too skimpy of outfits for their fighting outfits. Why
Mm-hmm.
is it that some games just take it to the next level?
Yeah, so actually originally enough, the creator of Street Fighter, when he was making the game, he specifically wanted to add like one is at least when he was talking about Chun-Li, he wanted to add a girl character because he's like I want girls to play the game too. So I'm going to make a character that they'd like, and she's a kung fu master, and he basically based a lot of his characters on old Chinese like fighting films, and there was a lot of female kung fu artists, and he basically represented her. And in the original version, really not too bad, but in the later Street Fighter games, you see that her thighs just get thicker, her boobs get fatter, and then her waist gets smaller. And that's a very popular trend within similar games like Dead or Alive, which is like another Japanese fighting game. And these characters are just extremely sexualized. And it's not to make girls feel better about playing the character, it's to get guys into playing the game more because you're going to see the character and you're going to be like, wow, those are some nice tits, right? Like there's a whole like not scam, but there's a
It's
reason
so
why.
toxic, I feel like.
Well, of course it
Such a
is, right?
toxic way.
You're hypersexualizing women, and one of the biggest controversies, right, would be Lara Croft from
Tomb Raider, yeah.
Tomb Raider, and she was super sexualized early on in the series, and it wasn't until 2015, actually, I believe, where the company finally got like together and they launched a rebranding of her because before that, Lara Croft was always like she was always sexualized, like for her beautiful body, and what happened was they wanted to embrace her sexuality but without making her an object, without objectifying her. So,
Hmm.
what's her name? Rihanna Pratchett. She is the lead writer. She was the lead writer on Rise of the Tomb Raider, that came out a few years ago, and she talked about how the new version of Lara Croft is not she's not sexualized. They because what they did is they changed her appearance. She's not wearing like the skin tight booty shorts and stuff anymore. She actually has like a full set of gear on now, and
Hmm.
she has this one quote. I have it right here. She says
For the record,
she
that game was amazing. I love
I
that.
actually
I
didn't
love
play it.
Tomb
I
Raider.
heard they're great games. I've actually just
Yeah.
never had a chance to play them,
Oh, they're so
unfortunately.
fun. They're so fun.
I believe it. I like the action looks insane. Like a lot of the story, the plot, it looks dope. I might have to pick
Hmm.
it up at some point. Um, but really quick, she does say she quotes in an article, she's strong, she's capable, she's empathetic, she's intelligent. She's all kind of things we think of as sexy in the real world. So it's not like she's not a sexy character, but she's just not sexualized, which is the difference. And I think that's a really important statement because like I was telling you before, like women should be embracing their sexuality. And I think that's a positive thing. Men should too. Like we should all be embracing our sexuality. But not being sexualized as an object for men to pleasurably gaze upon. That's the difference because she's going to be a powerful, strong, attractive woman so that women can also feel that way about themselves.
Hmm.
Not so that men can be satisfied with the fact, yeah, she's hot. And that's a big difference.
I really like this conversation on where we took this, on what you know. Like I would kind of wish I better prepared for this because like there's a lot going on in gaming now that makes me wonder. And
Mhm.
if you don't mind, I would love to have you on this podcast again sometime. Just so just to check up on see and get any questions answered that I couldn't ask you today, and to just see the overall like status of gaming to this day, if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah. Of course. I like talking about I love talking about my topic. I think it's something genuinely important because
Oh, for sure. I
funny
definitely
enough,
agree.
when I first started research, I actually just turned to Reddit and I posted on like some academic site, some gaming subreddits and stuff, just asking, hey, has anyone seen any statistics or any? I'm starting a thesis on this topic. Is anyone have any information, any leads where I can start? And I got a lot of hateful comments like, "Oh, you're wasting your degree studying something that doesn't exist. You're a fucking idiot. Girls are totally equal in games. You're dumb." And I was actually like, when that happened, I was just more reaffirmed in my research question as opposed to like being deterred
Hmm.
because it just
Those
proves
were some very ignorant comments.
that's exactly. So if someone really feels like if you are a male gamer and you tell me that you've played video games and not once have seen a girl been talked down to or sexualized or harassed, I think you're lying.
Oh, for sure. I can't tell you on how many Call of Duty lobbies that I've been in back in the day, and just the toxic masculinity in these pregame lobbies are so bad,
Yeah.
so bad. But, but yeah, where can people find you? Do you have your own podcast, social media wise?
Yeah, so as of right now, I have my podcast. It is called Get Informed. Go figure. I like to inform people on stuff. It You can find it at anchor.fm/Get Informed Podcast. Or I guess it's backslash, right? I don't know the difference, to be honest.
Mhm.
um, you can also follow me. I think I have a Twitter account for it too. I know I sound so like unprepared for it.
Okay,
It
boomer.
Yeah. I believe it's at Get Informed PC. Yeah, at Get Informed PC. And if you want to follow me, I'm starting in the process of creating a professional Instagram page. It is at Thomas M Durr, and you can follow me there. And I'm going to be posting like stuff for my podcast, my research, political stuff, because I do a lot of political commentary and analysis and stuff. So you can find all my information there, and I totally encourage you guys to like tweet at me, message me, if you want to come on the podcast, you have an interesting topic you want to talk about or have me on, or just general questions about what I talked about here today, then just message me. I love to educate people and inform people on different things. And if you have any questions, just reach out.
Eh? I'll be sure to link all your social media and your podcast in the description of this. So check them out, guys. And once again, thank you, Thomas, for joining me on this short notice podcast, and thank you for bringing this topic up to light again, because I think this is something that a lot of people should be informed of and should be aware of, especially for those that are in college right now and are still debating on a degree or want to get into STEM. So I thank you for bringing this topic up.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, Brian. It's an absolute pleasure to just talk about it.
All right. Thanks so much, man.